Okay, recording, and we're here to let your voice be heard with Jasmine Fuller. And Jasmine, I'll let you take it away.
Well, I'm 25 years old. I've had CRPS for 13 years, so over half my life now. And I was diagnosed at age 12 after many months. It was when I was a child, so I'm not quite sure on the timing, but it was at least many months, if not a year, before I got accurately diagnosed. And the initial injury that sparked the CRPS was an avulsion fracture on my ankle, which means a piece of bone on my ankle was chipped clean up.
Oh.
I remember it hurting, but I remember the pain going away pretty quickly. The break itself healed pretty fast. What happened was I got stuck by a llama, which is possibly the strangest reason to get CRPS ever.
Did you say you got struck by a llama?
By a llama. My family raided llamas every summer, and we would go hiking with them because they're great pack animals, and they can go on pretty steep slopes and have great footing, and so they're great pack animals carry your stuff if you're going on extended camping trips.
Okay.
So anyway, we would go up hiking with them every year, and one year I was 11 or 12, I was leading them around a bend, and my mom yelled for me to stop, so I stopped, but too suddenly for the llama to really know what I was doing. So it kept going and ran over me, and it stepped on my back and stepped on my ankle, and my back was okay, but my ankle got kind of crushed, and a piece was chipped off of it.
Wow.
And I think what influenced it to develop CRPS, that we were deep in the woods, and my dad was already carrying a really heavy backpack, so he couldn't really carry me. So I had to walk 3 miles on trails on a broken ankle.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Probably pushed it to develop it, at a young age.
Oh, wow.
So when I got back into town, I of course went to the doctor, and they just diagnosed this break, and they put an air cast on it, and I was an active kid. I mean, I was fine within a few weeks or a month or two. And then I remember the pain just never really went away, but it changed in quality. It started stinging more, and the pain started going into my foot more. And Mom, she didn't think I was making it up for attention or anything. She just thought I was a kid. I didn't really know what I was talking about. So at first she didn't pay that much attention, I don't think. But eventually we started going to specialists because it just never went away. And they put me through a whole battery of tests because at first they thought I had juvenile onset multiple sclerosis, which thank God it wasn't that. So I had to do a lot of nerve conduction studies, etc. And I was slated to have a surgery that I'm sure would have made it much worse because they couldn't figure out what was wrong with my ankle. They thought it was a physical abnormality they couldn't see on an MRI. So they wanted to do an arthroscopic surgery and go in and look at it, which I'm sure would have pushed it to spread much faster than it did. And 2 weeks before that surgery, my mom, thank God, had me checked out at Seattle Children's Research Institute. Used to be called Seattle Children's Hospital. And they had this pediatric neurologist on staff who recognized the signs of CRPS and was able to intervene and put that surgery to a halt. And then he wanted me to go to Johns Hopkins over on the East Coast for an entire summer vacation and do this experimental juvenile onset CRPS study kind of thing that they were doing with very, very intense physical therapy. But my mom chose to have me not do that and do a physical therapy regimen at home instead. And so they wouldn't give me any meds, even though it hurt a lot.
Right.
And before I left for boarding school, I did a capsaicin treatment, which is where they do that chemical that makes hot peppers hot, and they had it so concentrated that the nurses who administered it were in biohazard suits, which I remember really freaked me out as a kid. And then at 15, I got sent away to boarding school, and I went to 5 in 4 different states, and no one believed that CRPS was a real thing or that it had any bearing on my day-to-day life, because I could walk okay. I learned how to walk without too obvious of a limp as I was growing up. But in boarding school, I think it also pushed it to get worse because I had to do full-time farm work and things that were very strenuous on my leg and run a full mile every day, things that I really didn't want to do. So then we got after boarding school, but then we started really intensely treating it because my knee started buckling. I had nerve pain all the time, which by that time I just considered kind of a normal way of living. In addition to the pain, my knee would randomly buckle as I was standing there or walking or whatever, so I kept falling. So we started doing ketamine treatment, and I had, I think, 4 or 5 of those, and they became less and less effective over time, so they just stopped giving them to me at all. But I am on the waiting list at Swedish Hospital in Seattle to get another set this year if time works out.
Now tell us, how did you get into that? Into that program? How did you get into that program?
With the ketamine infusions? Well, kind of in an interesting way. So when I was 18, I started treating with this physician named Dr. Gordon Irving at Swedish Hospital, and he has published quite a few papers on related diseases and CRPS. Not really an expert in this, I mean, he's a pain management specialist and treats a lot of different kinds of cases. But he became very interested in mine, and due to his knowledge of the field, he was kind of kept abreast of the latest developments, and so I think he was pretty much responsible for starting the ketamine program up there. And as soon as he got me right into it, or as soon as it seemed appropriate for me, he got me right into it. So I got really fortunate with just being with a physician already who had connections to the program.
Did you have to do special testing for that program?
I remember that there were a lot of hoops that I had to jump through to get insurance to pay for it. I don't think the hospitals themselves, I think they knew I was qualified for them. But I know my insurance made me go see an energy worker. It was the same thing when I got my spinal implant. They made me just go to all of these different kinds of physicians to get checked off that they agreed with it, I guess. Oh, that's the other thing. I have a computerized spinal cord implant. It's a Medtronic SDS, and it can be programmed to provide stimulation that I can't feel, which is supposed to be effective, but it's not for my pain severity. So I usually have it cranked up pretty high, and when I'm in my wheelchair, I can't feel my leg most of the time.
Wow. So, how long have you had CRPS now?
I've had it for 13 years now, since I was 12.
Wow. And most of the treatments have not worked, is that right?
I would say that 90% of the things that we've tried have had no effect at all, and the remaining 10% haven't had very lasting effect. The most lasting positive thing has been the spinal cord implant. I don't think I would be able to function very well without that for long. It enables me to sleep for whole thing.
And you said now you are headed for a new program, is that right?
Yeah, so I've been accepted to this, I guess it would be considered experimental because it's not even legal in the U.S. yet, but as background, there was this study in Italy 2 years ago with 92 patients as the sample size, and I believe 90 of them had really positive results even a year later, which is not a cure, but it is the most lasting treatment we've ever found for CRPS. And I know that all of those subjects have been diagnosed for fewer than 2 or 3 years, and of course I've had it for 13 years. So I'm not expecting a miracle cure. I don't expect a whole lot of mobility to be restored for one thing. But if it lowers my pain levels at all, I'll be grateful. And if it does anything more than that, it'll be a miracle. So we'll pray for the best.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about it. What is this about?
Alright, so neridronate, it's also called neridronic acid, and it's a compound that's used to treat osteoporosis, a drug in a class called anti-osteoporotic. And I'm really not sure how they stumbled across the fact that it's effective for CRPS, but somebody probably had osteoporosis and CRPS and saw miraculous results using this combination of drugs, so they started this study in Italy. At any rate, it's very, very effective. It seems to kind of reset your nervous system. And so you do 4 infusions. I'm going to be in Italy. As background for your listeners, it's only legally available in Italy. So that's why I'm traveling so far to get it.
Is this the drug that they were talking about the States, that it would not be available for 10 years yet?
I don't know about 10 years, but I would say at least 6 or 7 years. Okay. Because what happens is it's the first phase of FDA trials right now. So if you're listening and you have CRPS and you don't have the funds available to get to Italy, which will also go into a cheaper way to do that than what's advertising. But anyway,
no, I'm interested in the study. If it comes here in the States, I am very interested in it.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say. A lot of people don't realize that they have studies going on in a lot of major American cities. So, for example, before I was accepted at this hospital in Italy, I was in touch with some administrators of clinical trials in Phoenix and Seattle, and both of them were hurting patients, if you can believe that. Like the one in Phoenix, they had 212 positions available, or I'm sorry, they had 286 positions available for the study in general. 212 of them remained unsold, and they've been running it for like 6 months.
Wow.
I mean, the treatment exists, and you can actually get paid to get it. It's just you have to be really kind of industrious and go out there and figure out how to get into it, you know? I know off the top of my head that there are ongoing studies right now in Seattle, Phoenix, San Francisco, Dallas, New York, Boston, and Oklahoma City.
Okay. So this is an infusion. This isn't something that they shoot into your spine, to the spinal cord, right? It's an infusion?
No, it is not, and it's not invasive at all. It's just like getting an IV at a hospital, like you would even if you're getting a saline solution. It's like the most non-invasive treatment really you can have for CRPS. It's kind of like getting a ketamine infusion, except you don't have the psychotropic effects of ketamine, which for a lot of people is a plus, and it's more effective. You get 4 infusions over 13 or 14 days, so I'll be arriving May 28th and doing like preliminary exams and stuff up until June 1st, and then June 1st through 13th I'll get 4 infusions spread out over that time, and I expect to be pretty sick between the infusions. I've never pleasant experience.
Wow. I'll be glad to hear how your trip and everything, all the details. I hope that you'll keep a journal or something so we can keep up and let everybody know how this is going for you or how it went for you. I'm very interested in knowing the results.
Afterward, I'd definitely be happy to do a follow-up and let you know how it went.
That would be great. Thanks.
And right now, would you like me to go just for a couple minutes explaining how it comes to be a goal? Because for a lot of people, it's just, including myself, it was just unattainably expensive.
Yes, please do.
Okay, so the way I actually found out that I was able to get these Neurigenate infusions is through Facebook, of all places. And for many months, I had been reading about them, like on CRPS blogs. I'm in graduate school studying CRPS, so I also just routinely read whatever research comes out in the current literature on it. And so I'd heard about Neurigenate for several months, maybe even up to a year, before I thought that it was at all possible for me to get it. And then I found this message in my Facebook feed that said, American CRPS can go to Italy and will pay for everything. Like transportation is included, lodging is included, an interpreter is included. They transcended the language barrier for you between you and the doctor with your medical records. And it sounded ideal. I mean, it sounded like everything you would possibly want. So I called them.
I seen one of those in my mailbox, and I thought it was spam, so I just...
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of looks spammy, and to be honest, it is, because what they're doing is they're telling Americans that the only way they can get neurosurgery treatments in Italy is if they pay $15,000.
Yes.
And my mother and I, including transportation and lodging for 2 whole weeks, are getting, and the medical treatments themselves, and 2 people going over there is under $5,000.
Wow.
So I know that's a lot of money. $5,000 is a heck of a lot more doable than $15,000. And I don't think that the extra convenience of having them arrange things for you is worth $10,000. I mean, what we did is it took us months of industriousness. It took quite a lot of dedication on my part, my mother's part, and I also have a healthcare advocate who's a friend of mine who used to be a nurse and works on my sometimes when I can't work. And between the 3 of us, we were able to get in touch with the doctor at the hospital, and we just started corresponding with him directly. And it turned out that the program, $15,000, was kind of affiliated with the hospital, but no more than it would be if you started corresponding with them. So it is completely and totally possible for you to get affordable originated treatment in Italy. And also keep in mind that they have nationalized health care as part of the European Union. And so including all of the doctor appointments I need, the examinations, the imaging, the tests, and the treatments themselves, it's only like $1,500 or $2,000.
Wow.
And that's the cost of like 2 MRIs in the U.S.
Wow. This has really brought you around to be a great advocate. Your experience. I really appreciate you sharing it.
Part of the advocacy I'm doing, we're a project founded last summer. This study, I only expected a few hundred participants, but it's gone viral several times, and I have over 2,400 CRPS patients around the world have responded to this study. And my results have found that 14% of respondents report that in their immediate family, which I defined as a child, sibling, or parent, they had a major neurological disorder, specifically someone else with CRPS, someone with multiple sclerosis, or someone with Parkinson's. And of course, 14% of the population does not have those disorders, so there's an undeniable inheritable link there. And so I've been spending the last several months of my graduate school career, I have 1 year to go in my Master of Science. I've been spending the last few months contacting genomicists and geneticists. The genomicists are people who specialize in medicine that's tailored to your genetic profile. It's kind of a cutting-edge field. And I've been in contact with people at several laboratories with the results of my study, hoping to advocate for CRPS patients in that way as well.
Awesome. That is great. I'm so glad to hear that. We really need as many advocates as possible. And it sounds like you were really on the cutting edge here of helping people through your experience to find a way for them to help themselves. That's awesome.
I hope so. That seems to be my purpose in life. You know, I moved down here to Arizona and I went to this graduate school before I became wheelchair-bound full-time. Well, like immediately before, a month before. And at first I was studying artificial life programming for my Master of Science. It's just a field that has always fascinated me. And as I've grown more and more disabled, but also more and more interested in the CRPS community and interested in helping people, I've realized that God gave me this challenge so that I could use the suffering to help others, because I don't think that I would be as effective of a helper if I didn't experience that suffering firsthand. So while I don't resent having CRPS, I do kind of appreciate it for giving me a direction in life. I think my purpose is helping other people not be hopeless or discouraged about having it.
Yes, absolutely. That's why I call my illness a blessing, and people don't understand that, but it's helped me to give me some more definite direction in my life, closer to God, and to be more empathetic and compassionate for others with this illness. And I know through my illness, I know I've had it only six years, but it has taken a toll every year to be, it does not get better. It just seems to bring a lot of garbage with it.
It is discouraging for sure.
It is. So, how do you handle that? I know most all of us get to that point with depression, and I know some people say they have no depression, but I think that...
Oh, I've struggled with depression. I'm not afraid to admit that. I even have a family history of it on my dad's side, pretty major depression, so I come by it honestly, whether or not I had CRPS.
What a way to put that, okay. Hey, that's the way to own it.
Right. So how do I deal with it? I don't know that anyone deals with it 100% of the time. I think for every human on Earth, some portion of dealing with it, no matter what your struggle is just melting down sometimes and not being able to deal with it. But aside from those moments, I think I deal with it a lot with the help of my fiancé. I know that sounds cliche, but he's my rock, and he really keeps me going, and he keeps me encouraged when I'm down on myself. He often says I'm my own worst enemy because I'm very much a perfectionist. I get straight A's, and if I don't get straight A's, I pester and persistently pester the professor until they give me extra credit. Like, I'm that kind of person. So, while that's good in some contexts, including I'm kind of this bulldog when it comes to getting people to pay attention to CRPS issues, it can also backfire on me in that I get critical on myself when there's not too much to criticize. So I think the way that I deal with that sort of skewed self-perception, which leads to a lot of depression, is I'm in constant communication with my fiancé, and he keeps really close watch over me and is pretty attuned to like my emotional state and when I need to talk to someone and when it might be helpful for him to give help. So I really credit God with giving me the exactly correct person to complement my circumstances.
That's awesome. Having support is so important. I know that so many don't have that type of support. And a lot of times I suggest to people that when you don't have that kind of family support in that, is trying to find somebody. There's always somebody out there that you can relate to with this illness and that you can talk to. I mean, it may not be everybody, but find that special person out there that you feel really connected to, and when you're in trouble, give them a call or find another person to give them a call. Or on top of that...
Absolutely. And for anyone listening, I mean, I'm not shy about giving help. I grew up in a family of attorneys, and keeping things confidential is not in my second nature. It's my first nature. So it's kind of a general call if anyone's feeling not even suicidal, just really down about yourself. Like, you don't have to be feeling suicidal to feel absolutely awful. So however you're feeling, if you want to contact me, I'm pretty easy to find online. I'm always happy to give advice and keep things confidential, even if you just need somewhere to vent or someone to talk to and that understands.
Yeah, I always call it also build a little toolbox for yourself. That's what I call a toolbox, where you keep these papers in there, and so on that day, because what works one day may not work the next day, so you'll have a bunch of things in your toolbox, and you'll pull it out, and one of them may say, watch an old funny movie, or read a book, or something that you enjoy to do, color. Go soak in some Epsom lavender salt, something, always trying to find that, listen to music, finding those different things and putting them in your toolbox, and actually using the toolbox, not just as a metaphor, but for real, when you're in that position, so that way that first thing doesn't work, then you have something else to go back to.
Absolutely, and maybe a first step, if you can get out of the house, is just change your environment. I know a lot of times depression is caused justifiably. I mean, there's a lot of reasons people to be depressed if they have this, but a lot of depression is caused by just overthinking, like thinking the same things over and over again until there's no choice but for them to get you down. And whether it feels like it at the time or not, it often helps to just be somewhere else and kind of reset your thinking and get looking at different things and seeing and hearing different things.
Absolutely, and I know how hard it is to get out of the house, especially when you're feeling in so much pain, and you just don't want to do it. But if sometimes you have to push yourself a little bit further, and the
way that I've gotten around that is I've incorporated it into my routine. Like, I know myself well enough to know that if I just leave it up to myself, there's always going to be a reason that I don't want to go out and serve others. And serving others is really what makes me feel the best. It's about myself and physically and emotionally. So I've structured it into my routine. Like, once a week I schedule the wheelchair van to take it into the public library, and I provide assistance to anyone who needs it at the resume center. I also run an editing firm on the side, so I have experience in that kind of thing. And then on Fridays I have the wheelchair vans, or my fiance, sometimes he comes. We go to the food bank, and I feel really like I have a good community there. So another thing to do with chronic depression is surround yourself with people, and you might not even know who those people are yet, but either joining a church and finding charitable opportunities that way, or just contacting local organizations that need volunteers is a really good way to make yourself get out of the house. And I know it sounds kind of a drag to go out and really early in the morning and give out food to homeless people, but it's great. It makes me feel better about myself every time. And I feel like I'm able to touch at least one life and tell one person about CRPS every day. So,
and that's a healing effect, Jasmine, for us. We don't realize it, but if we forget about our illness, try to forget about it, and just help somebody else, which helps us forget about our illness, it makes our hearts warmer. It just makes us feel good inside because we're being able to help other people. And that is a beautiful thing. That is the best medicine besides laughter. I mean, I just, I don't know what about it, but I know that really helps me a lot.
Definitely, and it helps to be, it always helps you to help other people, but it also helps to structure it into your routine, like finding an organization you can keep going back to and seeing those same people who are kind of oriented toward doing good like you are. It really helps over time.
Yeah, and you know what? I'm so glad that you came on tonight, because I know for me, that's something that I need to do. I need to work on structure, because I know that with my insurance not covering my procedure has really put me in a slump. But you're exactly right.
Understandably. It's like every time we get over one of those obstacles, another pops up.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we can't give up. We just can't. So, I know we talked about a few things in that, but what have you found positive and what have you found negative about the CRPS? I know we sort of covered a little bit, but in general, if you had to say for the negative, for the CRPS, and the positive, what would it be?
Those are pretty good questions. I think that there's too many answers to them to fit in right now. In the book that I'm writing my master's thesis on CRPS, and it'll also be published next year as a guide for CRPS patients, so keep your eyes out for that. It's called How to Survive, Thrive, Help, and Cope with CRPS, Learning to Live with One of Nature's Most Frustrating Diseases. But at any rate, in there I go into the even just first page, like the table of contents is broken up into the relational aspects of CRPS, the sexual aspects, the emotional aspects, and the physical aspects. And I think there's positive and negative each one of those categories. I think in my day-to-day life, the biggest negative is that it's just draining. Like, there's so much more energy that I could be having to do other things if I didn't constantly having to be fearing pillows to get comfortable or constantly having to think about my leg hurting. It just takes up so much mental energy that it interferes with everything else that you want to do with your life. Mm-hmm. And I think overall that has to be the most negative thing any disease can have on you. Mm-hmm. But there are positives to it as well, which I don't think people often realize looking from the outside, because it doesn't look like a disease that is pure suffering to have many to it, but there's an upside to every challenge that God gives you. And I think that the biggest positive for me is that people seem to really want to know about it. There's a huge gap in the world where for hundreds of years people just haven't paid any attention to CRPS. It was considered so hopeless and so embedded in the brain and so neurologically based that no physician wanted to test it, because it's not like a limb that you can just cut off if it's infected, or it's not like a flu that you can just, or that was a bad example, it's not like a disease you can just give antibiotics for and it'll go away. And so not only do doctors not want to treat us now, but no one has really wanted to research us ever. After the Civil War, they called it causalgia, and it was put in the same category as phantom limb syndrome, which is to say the same category that doctors just found completely, like, hopeless, lost causes. And I don't believe that any one of us at all is a lost cause. I firmly believe that. So I think the most positive thing is that when I go out, yeah, I'm in a wheelchair, and yeah, that's super annoying, but at least it gets a lot of people to ask me why I'm in a wheelchair. And I think every time I have an opportunity to tell someone about that is one more opportunity for us to get closer to finding a solution.
Yeah, that's great. And I'm going to be looking for that article that you're writing for your it's for your thesis, is that right?
Yeah, so it's going to end up being about probably a 300 to 400 page thesis, and I'll publish it as a 150 to 200 page book.
Okay, and how are we going to be able to get that?
Well, it will be published as an ebook. So if you have a Kindle account, you can go on Amazon and you can order it. It's not published yet, but once it is, you will be able to do that.
Okay.
And also, I'm going to make, it's called an EPUB format. And so if you just contact me and say you want it, once I have a manuscript, I can send it to you as a PDF document.
Okay. I most definitely put me down.
I will. Thank you. I'm glad to garner interest, even though see, the other thing I have to do this year is get married and get a second spinal implant. So all of these things are kind of coalescing and taking up a lot of my time.
Well,
but I'll be returning to graduate school in the semester after I get these surgeries, so probably this winter semester.
Okay, well, we're going to have to stay up with you, most definitely. So you've already told us about the events and projects you're working on. Is there anything that you'd like to say or talk about?
I don't know. I guess one thing I'd like to say is that the attitude your doctor has about you does not need to be the attitude that you have about yourself. Like, I can't even tell you how many dozens of doctors I've been to since I was 12 years old who basically were just like, yep, this sucks. Looks like I'm going to move on to the next patient who I can help. And it's really discouraging every time. Like, when doctors just assume they can't help you, then there's, of course, no reason for you to think that I can help you. They're the experts, right? So you have to, when you have CRPS, you have to become your own expert. And it's a gradual process. It's also a growing process. It's very, it's fulfilling, I think, in a way, to be able to direct your own health career, as it were, because it's a full-time job. That's the other thing I like to say is, like, give yourselves a break. Mm-hmm. Working a full-time job, sometimes on top of other jobs and sometimes not, but either way, it's a struggle. Mm-hmm. You should respect yourself for enduring that every day.
Mm-hmm. So, for For those that do not have a structure in their life, what is the best way to go about that for them? What do you think?
It's a gradual process. I think the best way to go about it is not to expect it to happen immediately, because it can be really discouraging when it doesn't, and you go back to having an unstructured life, because what's the point of putting effort into it if it just keeps falling apart, right? But it's built one brick at a time. Like, if you want your life to be a solid brick wall and nothing can get through it, then you need to build it brick by brick and put mortar down every time and make sure it dries. And to follow this kind of tired metaphor, if you instill structure in your life in the same way, like just do one thing and be proud of that one thing, then you'll have the pride and self-esteem to move on to the next thing. And maybe that first thing is something really urgent. Like, maybe you have kids and you've gotten CRPS and you don't even know how to pick them up anymore. Like, that's a very urgent problem. It needs to be at the front of your priorities, and I think nothing can be taken care of until that's taken care of. But then once it is, then you can move on to the next part of your life. Like, maybe you need to eat healthier, and that can be the next month. But it doesn't have to be the next day. And instilling structure in your life is a lifelong struggle that you take on every day, the same way like you take on your faith every day individually. So it's a never-ending battle, but you can win it.
So you have an SCS, so that I'm taking it that your illness did spread through your body. Is that correct?
I don't have full body yet. Well, I don't want to say yet, knock on wood. I don't have full body CRPS, but it has spread quite significantly since I first got it, yes.
Okay, and when it spread, was it immediately, or how did that come about?
Actually, it's delayed by a period of like a decade. So how it went about is I first got it, like I said, when I was 12, and it was in my ankle. And over the course of the next year, like maybe through 13 to 14, it spread over the whole of my foot. It didn't touch my toes, and it didn't go very far up my leg. But back to my Achilles heel, and my whole foot was like had really bad allodynia. It would get cold for no reason. It showed very hallmark signs of CRPS for years and years, but it didn't change. Then when I was 22, I tore my meniscus in my knee, and I had knee surgery to repair that. I think that was probably what led it to spread there, but then what really pushed it to spread there was I got a cortisone injection by the same dumb doctor who did the surgery, and that definitely pushed it to develop it. So over the next month or two, after I got that injection, which is only a few months after I got the surgery on my knee, the CRPS jumped up to my knee, and it now covers pretty much every inch from above my knee down to my toes, and it's going on to the sole of my foot and getting much more severe in my knee and creeping upwards in my leg. And so for that reason, because the spreading has become much more aggressive than it was historically, my doctors have recommended that I get a DRG stimulator after I get back from Italy and after I get married in September. For listeners who don't know that term, a dorsal root ganglion stimulator is like an SCS, except instead of preventing you from experiencing pain, it's supposed to keep your body from having the CRPS spread any further. So I'm really hoping that that will prevent it from spreading any further than my right leg.
I didn't realize that they were able to create something to help stop the spread.
It is a brand new technology in the United States. In the European Union, it's been authorized for 3 or 4 years, I believe, but of course we're behind the curve, lucky us. So it's a cutting-edge treatment here, and I'm getting it from, I think, the only surgeon in Arizona who has any idea what he's doing with it, because he seems to be the only one I could find who seemed related to the field. It's the dorsal root ganglion. I don't know why you would be familiar with the anatomy of the spine, but the dorsal root ganglion is a part that hangs off of your spinal cord, like right above your sacrum, kind of unilateral to your hip bone. And by plugging in, like the one that I have right now, I have 8 wires that go up my spine, like all the way up my spine to my neck, inside my spinal cord. And this new one that I'll be getting, the DRG, only has one little wire that sticks into the spinal cord at a very specific spot, and it puts out a frequency that you can't consciously feel, but it's supposed to keep those faulty pain signals, you know, the faulty feedback loop involved in CRPS.
Right.
It's supposed to prevent that from getting to your spinal cord at all and therefore being processed by your brain.
Yeah, I've had a lot of
sort of a deprogramming device.
So, what kind of advice would you tell somebody that's new to CRPS?
say that you're in an understandably dark place, and you should be really easy on yourself being in that place. Anyone who's experienced it, especially in the middle of life, like I grew up with what I consider a blessing. It was very devastating when I got it. I didn't know what life was like any differently. But for people who get it as an adult, I thoroughly understand how emotionally devastating that can be, and it rips families apart. It's the devil's disease for a reason. So the advice I'd give to people who first got it, don't underestimate the seriousness of it. Like, don't keep going along with your daily routine. Don't going to work and singing out your body. Don't keep going to work and telling your coworkers you're fine when you're really not, because you're just stressing your body out both psychologically and physically, and you're going to push it to spread. The best thing you can do for yourself, your kids, your husband, whomever it might be, is to take care of yourself. And I think a lot of CRPS patients, society doesn't program us to do that, especially if we're parents. And I think it's necessary that someone tell you that it's okay to feel however you're feeling, and it's okay if things are falling apart, because they'll fall back together again eventually.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, do you have anything else?
No, I think we have come to the end of the wisdom that I have to offer.
Well, let's talk
I would
about...
say that if anyone has questions, or if they want to participate in my study, or if they want to know about getting to Italy, please feel free to contact me. And my name is Jasmine Fuller. I'm pretty easy to find online. I'm the only Jasmine Fuller in a bright red dress and a wheelchair.
I'm interested in your study. The other thing that I did want to talk about that I forgot to ask you, we were talking a little bit before we started recording that, but you were talking about some of the loops that you had to jump through to be able to take this study. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up again. I would have forgotten to mention that. So, in the originate treatment in Italy, you'll recall that I said it was quite annoying to get in contact with them without using this 15-grand service. Mm-hmm. And after we did get in contact with them, there's this process called a records review, which is very rigorous and quite annoying. You have to send them chart notes confirming your diagnosis. You have to get a laundry list of blood tests. I went in and they took 7 vials of blood for 11 different tests the week before last. You have to send them imaging. So luckily I had imaging within a year that they wanted and was able to send it to them without too much difficulty. But especially if you're a newly diagnosed patient, it's going to take you a while and a lot of frustration to get those tests ordered, all those imaging ordered, because doctors in the U.S. aren't inclined to think that they are necessary. So it's kind of annoying. And one of the hoops that I had to jump through was for at least a month. With the American clinical studies, it's actually like 3 or 4 months. But for the Italian treatments, it's 1 or 2 months, where that you have a dental exam where they say you don't need any more dental work done, and you have to have at least a month or 2 before the treatments when you don't need any more work done on your teeth. So last week I had to go in and have a crown put on and porcelain on the same appointment, which is not pleasant, but it was all over with. And the reason for that is because the neridronate itself, and actually most anti-osteoporotic drugs, are quite detrimental to your teeth and jaw structure. So they want to make sure that it's as healthy as possible before you get that kind of onslaught to that part of your body.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah, and what you said is true, too, about doctors in the U.S., about they don't think that, especially MRIs, that they don't think that they are necessary. And because
the newest research that I'm reading, especially in this book that I'm going to plug because it's amazing, if you're a newly diagnosed CRPS patient, you should also read Putting Out the Fire by Dr. Katinka van der Merwe, and she's a doctor. I'm also in contact with her online. She's a pretty cool lady. She runs a clinic in Arkansas and is a specialist in something called quantum neurology and specializes in treating CRPS and other neurological disorders. So there's a lot of advice in there about how to get treatments and how to function as a newly diagnosed patient as well.
That's interesting. Yeah, I haven't been online much, so I'm going to have to check that out.
Well, when it comes to American doctors, there's a lot to be desired. They don't think really anything is necessary. And, the reason that I segued to that book by Dr. Van der Merwe is in it she talks about thermography, which is neurological imaging, where they take a thermal image of both of your limbs, whatever one is affected by CRPS, and then the one that isn't, if you're fortunate enough to have a matching limb that's not affected yet. And it's the most effective diagnostic guide we've ever found for CRPS. Like, there are very visible indicators of CRPS. So look for the Italian treatments, and if you're just looking to have, like, solid proof for someone that you have CRPS, like an insurance company, I would suggest getting those thermographic tests.
Yeah, and the problem with that is those thermographic tests are not always offered in any location that you're at. So your insurance might not pay for it, which you'll have to do traveling and pay for the hospital and another doctor to order it, and it can get pretty expensive.
It can, yeah. Everything with CRPS treatment, it depends on how cooperative your doctor is. If you can find a cooperative doctor, you will save thousands of dollars a year. It's a sad reality.
Absolutely.
For anyone who lives in the Pacific Northwest area, I would highly recommend, even if you have to travel from Portland or whatever, go see Dr. Irving or someone in his clinic at the Swedish Pain Clinic in Seattle. They're very pro-patient. They will go out really far on a limb to make sure that you're not suffering.
Great. Thank you so much, Jasmine. And
it was a pleasure and a privilege. Thank you for having me on.
I'm so looking forward. I hope that your treatments, and pray that they go well, and that I'm looking forward to an update. And I'm really looking forward to your thesis. I'm really excited about all this. So I most definitely want to stay in touch with you. And I do want to check out your study.
And I feel so encouraged. I'm glad that we connected.
Yeah, me too. Well, Jasmine, thank you for coming, and you have a blessed night.
You as well. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.